This is WLEE Richmond, a nationwide station presenting the people, the events, and the issues that concern and affect our daily lives. This is Exploration, a public affairs series of WLEE News.
I'm Randy Davis, WLEE News, and my guest this morning is Richmond City Manager Manuel Deese. Mr. Deese, 37, was selected Richmond's first black city manager last month after service as acting manager since the ouster of former manager William Leidinger last fall. He's formerly served as assistant city manager for operations and for administration in Richmond. He was assistant to the manager in Alexandria and served as policy analyst for the National League of Cities in Washington. Mr. Deese has a master's in public administration from American University, having graduated from Morgan State in Maryland. Manny Deese is married and has 2 sons. Mr. Deese, first of all, welcome to the program today.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
And let me start off by defining the difference between your job and the mayor's job. A lot of cities have a mayoral form of government. I believe Richmond is a city manager form of government. What are the differences between your job and Mr. Marsh's job as mayor?
I think there are several fundamental differences. One is that by the charter, the city manager is the administrative head of the city and carries out the policies of city council. The mayor is the chairman of the city council, and he is the one who enforces the Robert's Rules of Order at council meetings, and he is also the policy setter for the city and a politician. My job is non-political. His job is political, and I think the fundamental difference is that I'm the in-house administrator and he is the external policy maker and politician.
Is there any way to define whether there's more power in one job than another in this form of government, do you think?
In this form of government we have in Richmond, the purest form of this council manager form of government is that the mayor functions supposedly as a ceremonial person, and the administrator functions as the true administrator of the city government.
You were city assistant manager for how many years?
I was the assistant city manager for 4 years here in Richmond.
Okay, and have you noticed anything being here this short time in this office and here that you didn't quite realize was going on in here since you moved over here from the assistant position?
A tremendous amount of volume of paperwork, a tremendous amount of contacts with people of all stature in the community and outside of the community, a tremendous amount of requests for public appearances and people like yourself coming in and talking and being interviewed. I think it's a lot more work.
You didn't have many interviews when you were assistant city manager?
I didn't have many interviews because I wasn't on the point. I'm on the point now, so I have a lot of them.
On the point. That's an interesting point, being on the point. Does that put a lot of pressure on you? Has it changed your personal life much in having things to do and having a lot more work to do?
I think it has changed somewhat in that some evenings I get home fairly late. Some evenings I miss dinner completely because I have to attend another meeting or go to a banquet. So I think, it has increased our babysitting costs, and it also has increased our visibility throughout the community.
You haven't had any thoughts yet of withdrawing your name from consideration as a city manager, have you?
No, I haven't. I like it.
I mentioned in the introduction that you are the first black city manager of Richmond. Richmond has been proud of many firsts in the past few years. Mayor Marsh is the first black mayor. The council, which is now sitting, is the first black majority council. Mr. Lewis is the first black fire chief of Richmond, and you're the first black city manager of Richmond. Does this put any pressure on you, do you think, or how do you put this in your mind, being a first? I'm sure you're proud to be first at anything, whether it's the first woman to go to the moon or whatever. Everyone's proud to be first. But how do you deal with that?
Well, Randy, as you know from my background, I've been the first in a lot of the jobs that I've held. Now, when I went to Alexandria, I was the first black person to hold an administrative position, and the first black that ever worked in the city manager's office there with responsibility. You're correct. I am the first black city manager for the city of Richmond, and I'm also told that I'm the first black city manager of a major southern city. So I find that kind of interesting. But I can't be so concerned about that. My concern is that I'm a manager, I'm a professional, that I'm paid to administer the affairs of the city of Richmond, and I think that's my obligation. If I just happen to be first because of color, that so be it. But my job is to try to be a first-rate, and I think I am, administrator for this city.
You don't feel, though, because of your position as being the first, that you have to make tremendous changes solely because of race, or feel any pressure from the black community to do different things other than you would have if you were not the first black manager?
Well, I think obviously there are some pressures that I would feel because one, I am black, and two, I am an administrator, so I am probably a little closer and a little bit more sensitive to the problems of the black community, and I understand them. Well, however, I'm also sensitive and I understand the problems of the other parts of the community, and particularly the business community. So I think that there are going to be some pressures on me to respond or be responsive to certain social needs in the community. And I think that, I am sensitive to them, and, where appropriate, we will be addressing those social concerns. But I think overall there are more different pressures on me than there would be on a white administrator if they were in this position.
The white administrator whom you succeeded in office was ousted last fall by City Council for several reasons. Basically, some said that he was too business-oriented. He was not, speaking of Mr. Leidinger, he was not concerned about some of the problems on the social end of the scale of the city, and the city went through a long, involved process of seeking another city manager. And I've got a question, but I just reminded myself of something else I wanted to ask you. The city went through a long process, 2, 3, I guess it was about 3 or 4 months worth of a special city council city manager selection committee looking at candidates from all over. And I'm sure there was upwards of maybe 100 or more candidates who applied for the position, and it was narrowed down to 15, and it was narrowed down to 8, and it was narrowed down to 3, and finally you were selected. It seemed to me as a reporter, and it seemed, I think, probably to most people in Richmond, you were the top in the assistant city manager post. You were acting city manager. You had been acting city manager for a few months. People had seen that you could do the job. Do you think it was really necessary to go through all the expense and the trouble of looking for someone else when it turned out that you became the city manager anyway? How do you explain that?
I think it's very important that they went through that process. One, because I think the selection committee and the council should be given the opportunity to look at a variety of people, a variety of management styles, and the only way that you're going to determine that you have the best person is to advertise nationwide. And I think under the laws that we operate under, particularly the federal statutes, it would be most imperative that you open job opportunities up to all people so that you'd have an opportunity. If they would have gone with me, they might have excluded women applicants if there were any. If they would have gone with me, they would have probably excluded white applicants. So I think that the process that they went through was the appropriate process, and the process that I normally use in recruiting. I want to make sure that I have covered the market, that I have reasonably am assured that the persons that we select are the best qualified individuals. And it just happened that they went through the process and they found that I was a person for the job, and I just happened to be here. So I think that the process was appropriate. That's the way I would do it also.
How did you feel about your chances before the selection was made?
Well, it took me, as I don't know you noticed or not, it took me about a month or more to determine whether or not I should be an applicant. And I really didn't apply for the job until the last day. I guess the last 15 minutes in the work day, I submitted my application. So I guess I had some thoughts about it. Do I want to do it? Do I want to stay in Richmond? Do I want to look at something else? What have you? And I just decided that I had expended a lot of energy and time over the years trying to reach the level of being a top administrator in municipal government, and I felt that it was time for me to do it. And that's why I thought that I should apply for the job. That's how.
I know you haven't been in the official top manager post for very long, and this is maybe looking ahead a little bit farther, but do you think that you could look at Richmond as a stepping stone to a higher job in some other larger city, or do you plan to stay here for the rest of your life, or are you going to give me a definite answer on that?
Well, first of all, I can't look into the looking glass and say how long I'm going to be here or where I go from here. But Richmond is truly a great city. It's one of the better cities in the country to manage and be the manager of, and it brings a certain amount of prestige to the individual who serves as a city manager. So I think that as far as a stepping stone, I don't think that's the case. I think that, I'm here for as long as I can be here to do the job. And if it takes 10 years to do it, then I'll be here 10 years. If it takes 4 years to do it, I'll be here 4 years. But I think that I'm here to try to do the job, and I'm not going to put a time limit on it.
We're talking with Manny Deese, the new city manager of Richmond, this morning on Exploration. I'm Randy Davis, and my next question is getting back to your predecessor. Mr. Leidinger, as I said, was ousted for his certain beliefs, the way he handled things, I would imagine. I would also imagine if you came into this office, you wouldn't be able to say that I'm going to continue the policies of the past, I'm going to continue doing everything Mr. Leidinger did, because if you did that, then presumably you would find yourself in the same position as being ousted by council. So you have to be, in some ways, different from your predecessor. And how do you see yourself as being different from your predecessor in your ways of thinking and your priorities?
Well, that's a difficult question because I have a tremendous amount of respect for Bill Leidinger. We're friends. I think the difference that I'm just going to be different. And I think that's the only way I can answer the question. I'm going to just try to be different. I'm a different individual. I'm a different person. And there are probably some differences in our management style, so I'm just going to be different.
But the citizens, not only of Richmond, but Virginia and of the Old Dominion, the old traditions that we had, are very conservative, very basic, and people are afraid whenever there's any type of change in government at all. Do you think that citizens will be shocked or amazed at some kind of change that will come up because of your new policies?
Well, I don't know, because I haven't really advocated any major new policies at this point in time. The letters that I have received letters and telegrams have now total, I guess, over 200. And I think that people are saying to me that we support you, we are impressed with you, and we like what we see, and you are a most capable individual. That's what the letters and telegrams are saying. So I think that as long as there's support for activities and programs and change, then I'm going to make change. And I'm not going to be sitting back on the fence and I think something's right and I think we need to change something, I'm going to change it. And I have to deal with the consequences that flow from it, positively and negatively. So the changes that will be made will be changes that will be rationally and logically thought out. And make sure that there's a good financial base for doing what we're doing. So I don't think people should be that concerned. I think everything changes, and government changes also.
Other than paperwork, other than housekeeping duties, other than things that every city manager has to do, whether he wants to or not, what issues or what problems or what priorities take up most of your time, or do you think will take up most of your time in office as city manager?
I think one of the things that's going to take up some time for a while is going to be Project One. Working on that and see to it that it's implemented. As you know, we lost our major developer this week, and I think that a lot of my time is going to be spent now trying to talk to and discuss with other developers or the possibilities of coming to Richmond or develop some other alternatives. So I think that's going to take up a lot of time. I have a deep concern, and I have a lot of experience in working in neighborhood programs and projects. I'd like to see our neighborhoods revitalized over a period of time. I'd like to see our employees given the opportunity to improve their work skills, and feel that there's upward mobility and advancement in our system. So there are economic development issues that I think we have to address. There are concerns about equity from state funding and state programs that the city gets its fair share. And I think these are some of the items that come to mind right away that I should start looking at and spend some time doing.
All right, back to the first one you mentioned, Project One. I know it's the matter is in the courts, and I know it's hard to be too specific about things, but I think the average Richmonder, it looks like that Richmond must sell its bonds. To sell its bonds, they have to be away from court litigation. They have to have a good bond market, a good bond rating, and to build Project One, the downtown convention center complex, they have to have the money from the bonds. And if opponents continue filing litigation, filing lawsuits against it, something has to be done to stop that if the project is to go on. The mayor and other city officials have sought help from the General Assembly on this, but so far from indication, it doesn't look like they're going to be too willing to change things. What's going to happen? Some people say that Project One is doomed. It's never going to happen. Others say that something will be done to bring Project One about. It's too big of a project just to ignore and let fall by the wayside. What do you think is going to happen?
I'm very optimistic. I think that the project is going to go. It's just a matter of which alternative we pursue. But I think it's a good project. I think it's sound. The financial support as far as the city is already there because, as you know, the Housing Authority has started to acquire or has options on at least 39 parcels of property totaling over $4.1 million. So I think that the effort is being made, a vigorous effort is being made to make sure that this project is a go. And I'm going to do all that I can to ensure that it's a go. The matter now is to logically find an alternative that will be beneficial to the city of Richmond. And developers will be contacting, and we will hopefully try to move the project forward.
Another problem that the city has encountered, and I've talked about this with other city officials, and they always say that we're going to try to work together, is the cooperation or lack thereof between the city of Richmond and its surrounding counties, Chesterfield and Waco in particular. Issue after issue comes up. The issue of the Beltway, the issue of commuter traffic in certain roads, the annexation issue. A lot of different issues come up where Richmond just cannot seem to get along with the counties, or the counties cannot seem to get along with Richmond. Do you have any magic key to getting the jurisdictions together?
I think this is a national problem. I think you'll find that anywhere you have a central city and suburban communities surrounding the central city, I think that at this point in time we're going to have to be creative. There are some systems that are working in other parts of the United States. One that comes to mind particularly is the three-tier government in the Minneapolis area, where there's a legislative mandate that the jurisdictions work together on projects like water and sewer and transportation. I'm not advocating that we go that far, but I'm saying that there are some examples where it's worked. And I think that we're going to have to be creative, but the intergovernmental problem is a real problem. It's a problem throughout the United States, and every city in the country is trying to figure out how you get a better working relationship with the central city and surrounding communities. And if I had that particular skill or knowledge or be able to look into the looking glass, then I think that I would be able to market that and make a lot of money.
It's some kind of a key. I would go along with you as a financial consultant and take a cut, and we'd be rich. Well, along with this problem with the counties and cities is a population that in Richmond has declined over the past several years, and I've heard a lot of different ideas about things to do, and they seem to have not worked. Do you think that's a major problem, the population leaving the cities and going to the counties?
I think with our population loss, we have still been able to maintain a sound fiscal management policy, and not only policy, but in actuality, we are still a fiscally sound city. There are some trends in certain areas of the city where we are finding an increase in population, be it's so minor, but we're seeing a slight trend. If you look across the United States, you're seeing the trends in some of the central cities. For example, in Washington, D.C., and I guess that's not atypical, but you see a tremendous movement back into the city by middle income blacks and white individuals and families. I recently read in one of the national publications that the city of Detroit is experiencing a trend back to the city and also a trend back to downtown, even to the point that the National Republican Convention is going to go into Detroit. A few years ago, Detroit was considered the crime capital of the world. I think it led in every statistic in the top 7 crime index figures. So I think there is a general trend back to the city, and I think that as gas approaches the 82 cent and $1 per gallon, you will probably see another trend, because people just will not want to pay that kind of money for gasoline. And I think the cities, and particularly Richmond, is an attractive community, and I think people will want to move back into the city, particularly if we get our downtowns going. If our downtown comes back in full force, to the new restaurants that you see going up everywhere in town, I think people will just migrate back to the city, because that's the place to be, and I think it's the place to be.
When will this start? When will the migration start back?
Well, I don't know when, but I think you'll just see it trickle back into certain neighborhoods and in certain communities, and I would hope that it starts in the 1980s very strong and come back in a strong force.
One of the purposes for this program is to get our listeners acquainted with you, because, as I said, you were assistant city manager, and though you did have some powers, you have a lot more powers now, and people want to know who is running their city. Tell us a little bit about your background, about your history, where you come from, and just help us get a little bit more acquainted with Manny Deese, the man, instead of Manny Deese, the manager.
Well, Randy, I grew up in the city of Pittsburgh as a child. I went through the public school system there. Came from a working class family background. I had some good folks, my parents and others, who were people who I emulated. I worked in high school in a drugstore for 3 years and played basketball in high school. And this gentleman I worked for was instrumental in showing me the light and saying that there are other things that you can do. I grew up in the inner city of Pittsburgh, which is at that time was considered a slum. And with that kind of motivation and emulating this particular gentleman, I said that I want to do something with myself. And I went to college and Morgan State University, and then I went back to Pittsburgh after I finished college and worked for 3 or 4 years in various jobs. And the last job I had was I worked in the mayor's office, carrying out an assignment for one of the commissions associated with the mayor's office. And then I left and went to Washington for a while, because I felt that I needed to broaden my experience, because I was dedicated to living and working in the urban environment, and particularly at the city level. I was able and I obtained a graduate degree in public administration from American University in Washington, and then I went over and worked almost 4 years in Alexandria, and then I came to Richmond. So my background is a background of one, not only being a city person, living and breathing the city, but being deeply involved in activities at the community level, and activities that are related to working with the business community. So my background is that of typical inner city urban guy who got a break and was able to take advantage of it.
So was it at one point in your life where you looked ahead and said, I want to be a city manager of a large city, or did things just fall into place and happen one after another?
I think that when I started working in Alexandria, I think that's when I decided at that point that I wanted to be a city manager. I think it probably just occurred a little bit before that, a couple of years before that, when I was looking at the forms of government and the opportunities. And I said, I've dedicated all my life to working in cities. And I said, if I got to live in a city, then I want to run the city. So that's why I said I want to run the city and be an administrator. And I just decided that this was the best way to do it. And then the next logical step after being an assistant or an assistant manager is to be a manager and run your own show and see if you can do something in urban America to help make it a better place for people to live. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Is Pittsburgh better or worse than Richmond?
You got to put me in a funny position on that one. I don't think I'm going to try that. I'm not going to answer that question. I think Pittsburgh is my home. I like it very much. I like to visit it. But Richmond is a nice place not to visit, but to live. So I visit Pittsburgh, but I live in Richmond. Mm-hmm. I think I'll leave that one alone.
You're married and you have 2 children.
Right.
What do they think of all this?
My kids, the first couple of days that they saw the pictures in the paper, and in fact, my little boy went to school my oldest son, he went to school, and one of his classmates had cut his picture out of the newspaper. He was all excited about that. I think in his office in the school, they had the picture up on the wall, on the bulletin board, and he was excited about that. So for him, he was a little celebrity, and for a couple of days there, he was watching television, and he was seeing himself on TV, and I think that thrills the kids. But I think that things are settling down now, and they know that I have some important position. My wife has always been very supportive of everything that I've always done, and without her, I wouldn't have been able to do some of the things that I'm doing. We've been married 12 and a half years, so she is, my inspiration and my right hand support.
How long is the city manager's term?
City manager in Richmond has an indefinite term. There is a trend now in some cities throughout the United States where city managers are asking for negotiating contracts. But my term is an indefinite term.
Well, however long it lasts, when you retire sometime, whether it's 5, 10, 20, 30, or 40 years from now, what do you want to look back on? What do you want to say that this was my biggest contribution to the city? Is there going to be any one thing that you really want to get accomplished that you can really be proud of?
I just want to look back and people can say that, Manny Deese was a good city manager. He was able to move Richmond forward. Some of the ideas and concepts that he has, we're using them now. Richmond is a center of attention in the southeast. They're doing things. It's a place that we need to visit, and Manny Deese had something to do with that, and that's what I want him to say, that he was a good manager. He ran a good city, and people respected him, and he did a good job for us.
Well, you were elected unanimously by council, and I think by the cards and letters you said you've gotten, everyone supports you, and we're proud to have you as our new city manager. Thank you for being with us on the program today.
Thank you, Randy. I enjoyed it.
We've been talking with Manny Deese, the new city manager of Richmond, on Exploration this morning. I'm Randy Davis, WLEE News.
You've been listening to Exploration, a public affairs series of WLEE News. We care about Richmond and the issues, events, and groups that make up our daily lives. If there's something you'd like to hear on Exploration, call WLEE weekdays at 288-2835 or drop us a line. And be here next week for Exploration.